So how do we respond whenever God reveals himself to us? When we see him for who he is, we realize that there's a creator, there's someone out there that has made us, and he's powerful, and he set up the rules of this universe. When we see all that, how do we respond? Do we realize that if he did create us, then he does have some say over our lives, and also that he is the one and only God and that we should follow him? Or do we resist that completely and say, I realize that there is a spiritual force out there, but I refuse to acknowledge that he is the one true God, and I refuse to follow him. That's the question that we have before us today, because God has always used his people to reveal himself to the people that don't know him yet. And we're going to watch how that happens with a woman named Rahab, and then also all of the people that she is living amongst, and see the juxtaposition as to how she responds and how the other people respond, and then the outcome of each one of their responses from God. Remember that Joshua was one of the 12 spies that Moses sent in 40 years ago. And only he and Caleb wanted to continue to go into the promised land. This is the land that God had promised to Abraham and his descendants over 400 years before. And Moses was trying to send them in, but he sent these 12 spies, and 10 of the spies were like, yes, this land is perfect. It's exactly as God told us, but there's giants living there. Their cities are fortified, and we don't want to go. Joshua and Caleb said, yes, there are giants living there, and the cities are fortified, but God will be with us. He's promised this land to us, and I trust him. The people wouldn't do it. So Joshua has been waiting 40 years to go into this land that God has promised them. And before, he was just a messenger. He was just explaining to the people what the land looked like and all of that. But this time, he is the leader. And the people have promised that they will follow him. And so Joshua is about to send the people into the promised land. But since he is a military leader also, he sends 2 spies in, which, remember, there were only 2 from the first time that actually agreed to go in. And so this time he only sends 2. And these 2 spies, he says, go in, search out the land, especially the land of Jericho, and then report back to me so that we have a little bit of an idea of what we're looking at whenever we go in there. He has full intention of going in. This is not a, let me know if we can do this kind of thing. It's just, I want to know what's going on. And so these 2 spies go in, and when they get to Jericho, there's a wall around this city. And so they enter the gates, and they go into a woman's house named Rahab. Rahab is a prostitute, and she lives inside the city wall. So scholars tell us that there were 2 walls, one outer wall and one inner wall, and that there were houses built between the walls. And this is a perfect place for a prostitute to have her home, because it would be accessible to travelers, and it would also be accessible to the people that are living there. And so she lives within this wall, but this is also a perfect place for the spies to not be found. That men enter this woman's house all the time and no one pays attention. And so they think this is a perfect house to go to. And we know that travelers are aware of her. So maybe she was standing outside the wall and advertising her services, and they saw her, and they go into her house. Now, they thought that this was a good way to stay hidden, but apparently they have some distinguishing features. Their ethnicity is known. And someone goes to the king and says, hey, there are Israelites in this land, and they're probably spying it out. And so the king sends 2 men to Rahab's house to ask about these men and capture them. But somehow Rahab gets wind of this, and she takes the men on the roof. These roofs would be flat, and she has some stalks of flax that she is drying out on the roof. So they would use this flax for linens and things, and they would lay them out on the roof to dry. And so that's what she's done. So she takes these stalks of flax and she hides the men under these and lays them on top of the men so that no one will see them. And then she goes back into her home. And when the men knock on the door, this is what she says. This is Joshua 2 verse 4. And she says, yes, the men came to me, but I didn't know where they were from. And it happened as the gate was being shut, when it was dark, that the men went out. Where they went, I don't know. Pursue them quickly, and you should be able to overtake them. And so she sends the men out of the city, away from the spies that she's hidden on the roof. And they know where the Israeli camp is. They also know where the shallow parts of the Jordan River are. And so the men start out towards the shallow areas where most likely the spies have crossed. Once they leave the city gates, Rahab goes onto the roof to get the spies, and then she professes faith in their God. So this is the important part of the lesson. This is verse 9. I know that the Lord has given you this land. The terror of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land are faint-hearted because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites who were on the other side of the Jordan, Sihon and Og. Remember, they have defeated those 2 kings on the east side of the Jordan, and that's the land that Manasseh and Reuben and Gad will get. And then she says, we heard that you utterly destroyed them. And as soon as we heard these things, our hearts melted. Neither did there remain any courage in anyone because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and on earth beneath. And so this word that she uses for the Lord is Yahweh, his personal name that the Israelites use for him when they speak of him. And so she is saying, I know the name of your God, and I know that he has given our land to you. We saw all of the things that he's done to these other nations, Egypt and Sihon and Og, and all of the people here, they have seen this too, and everyone is scared. But unlike them, they're trying to make war with you, but I am not doing that. I'm telling you, I know that God is giving this land. And so she was less afraid of the king and his men than she is of their God. She believes that God will give the land to the people. And so she says, I have faith that your God is the God. She says he is the God of heaven above and earth below. She doesn't trust in the gods of Jericho. She doesn't trust in the kings or the soldiers. She has no faith in them. Her faith is in Israel's God. So she is exclaiming that to them right now. Let me continue reading in verse 12. She says, so I beg you, swear to me by the Lord, since I have shown kindness to you, that you will show kindness to my father's house. Give me a true token, and spare my father, my mother, my brothers, and my sisters, and all that they have, and deliver our lives from death. And so the men said, our lives for yours, if none of you tell this business of ours. It shall be, when the Lord has given us this land, that we will deal kindly with you. So she's professing her faith in their God and then asking that he save her. This is exactly how we all receive salvation. And that's what we're going to talk about at the end of this. She is professing her faith in him and she's asking that he save her. And they say, yes, you saved our lives. We'll save your life. And yes, we'll save everyone who is in this house. All you have to do is just not tell on us. If you will do this, then we will save you. And so she lets them out of her window with a rope. She sends them in the opposite direction of the men. And she says, stay there for 3 days. Give them time to search for you and give up and come back to the land. And then you can go back to your land. They say, okay, we will do this. Now, when we leave, we need you to tie scarlet cord in this same window. And then when we come to attack your land, we will see this cord in your window, and your house only will be spared. So anyone that you bring into this house, they will be spared. But anyone that is outside of this house, they will be killed. And all you have to do is just bring them into the house and make sure that you don't tell a soul. And she agrees to this. And so whenever the men leave, she ties the scarlet cord in her window, and then the spies go out for the 3 days. And then just as she anticipated, the men do give up. They never find the spies, and they give up and come back home. And then the spies go back to Joshua. And this is the last of Joshua 2. It is verse 24. And this is what they say to Joshua. They say, "Truly the Lord has delivered all the land into our hands. For indeed, all the inhabitants of the country are faint-hearted because of us." And this is exactly what God told Moses to tell the people he was going to do. He said it in Deuteronomy 2:25 and also in Deuteronomy 11:25. He says, "I will begin to put the dread and fear of you upon the nations under the whole heaven, who will hear the report of you, and they shall tremble and be in anguish because of you." And then in 11:25, he says, "No man shall be able to stand against you. The Lord your God will put the dread and fear of you upon all the land where you tread, just as he has said to you." So God told him, they're going to hear everything that I did for you against the rest of these nations. And they're going to know that I can do the same thing to you. And they're going to be afraid of you. And so the spies tell Joshua that's exactly what happened. They are all afraid. And so God's promises are being fulfilled right before their eyes. This is just another confirmation that God is giving them the land, because everything is happening just as he had planned.